This sounds sort of pessimistic, but I think it's actually optimistic in a way that I think John Lee has been running the city since he was elevated to chief secretary. I think that Carrie Lam has been sidelined for a long time. John Lee has been the one who's sort of been driving and responsible for the turn into a police state. So now he's being formalized as sort of the ruler of Hong Kong. Hopefully that means that not much will change, that he was running the city before and he'll be running the city now. He'll just have the title. With that said, obviously things are deteriorating and they're continuing to deteriorate. The arrests yesterday, depending on your time zone, charging people for clapping in court with sedition and that's something that we haven't seen before, and they're just pushing the limits. And I think we'll continue to see that. I think that John Lee is in charge because his mindset is complete control and complete sort of obliteration of what makes Hong Kong special. My hope, though, is that because he's been in charge anyway, that we won't see it speed up necessarily, and that we'll continue to have some opportunities to fight back in ways that are hopefully strategic and creative and careful. I think everybody in Hong Kong has had friends who have sort of trickled out over the last couple of years. In the last several months, for me, and we've seen that really speed up. If people thought that they would, maybe non-political people, they thought that they could kind of make it through after the protests and after the national security law and all of these things, I think that COVID has been a bit of an awakening to them. And I think this is particularly true with more privileged people, with expats, with privileged locals, that we thought, all these crackdowns and all of this suffering, it's not going to affect us. And that's clearly not the case. I think the COVID policy of the last several months and its just level of just incompetent extremism, I think it really reflects just the mindset of an authoritarian system where there's no real planning, there's no real thinking about what's best for the city. It's only about, avoiding any kind of negative attention on yourself. It's sort of the mindset of, if we as government officials plan for the worst, then that can get us in trouble because it'll sound like we think bad things are going to happen. And when that's the case, nobody is really safe. And that's I think what we're seeing with COVID, with children pulled away from their mothers. And that's true for expats and locals. It's true for the wealthy and the poor. Everyone locked down, uncertain about when they're going to be dragged away to a quarantine facility despite not being sick. All of these things, I think, have really hit home with a lot of people and made them realize that it's really not tenable for anyone to remain in Hong Kong. And I hope, like I said, I don't know that necessarily John Lee's elevation will change much. I think the same pace might continue. If there are still people who think that Hong Kong is going to be returning to normal or something like that might make them realize that the plan is Xinjiang style. I had 2 stints in prison. I met quite a few national security law people, and they were on remand last summer, and they're on remand still. And that's the idea under the national security laws. Stripping of due process away from people is keep them in prison. They're political enemies of the government, and so they'll keep them in jail for as long as it takes to get them to just break down and avoid a trial altogether. And it's incredibly frustrating to see that. A lot of these guys are really young. For the high-profile guys, so most of the 47, as well as Jimmy Lai, Betty Tai, Joshua Wong, and people like that, they're all kept in solitary confinement. So they call it sort of removal from association or something like that, but it's solitary confinement. It's puts them into a situation where they get very little interaction with other prisoners. And it makes no sense from a security or safety standpoint. It's just designed to make them suffer. There's some very bad guards, but they tend to target people not for politics usually, but for other things. So, for example, if a general prisoner, raises their hand at inspection and has a complaint about their rights not being respected, that prisoner will then get a hell of a lot of backlash. That's the kind of thing that is really kind of broken down in the system. With that said, there are conditions in the prison that for political prisoners and for non-political prisoners really are below the standard of what you would expect for a society that claims to be an international city and a developed society. No mattresses, which is really unhealthy for prisoners. No air conditioning and no heat, no matter how hot or how cold it gets. The sanitation at Stanley is okay, but at Lai Chi Kok is disgusting. I mean, it's a filthy, filthy place. Toilets don't work. Toilets overflow and flood, and nobody cleans them up. There's, cockroaches and dirt everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I do see myself as a Hong Konger. It's funny being back in the U.S. People say, kind of, welcome home. I'm like, I kind of feel like a foreigner here. My plans for now, I don't have any intention of going back into corporate if I can avoid it. And I think at a certain point through all this process, this is the kind of thing that I wanted to do. This is why I became a lawyer. It wasn't to kind of defend rich corporate interests, and that was a nice reminder for me. So these few weeks, I've been spending time meeting a lot of the activist community and the Hong Kong legal community and people like that, try to figure out where I can fit in. And sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'll let everybody know what my plan is. But I had every intention of keeping my professional focus on Hong Kong and on the human rights movement for China. I really admire people who are staying behind. I hope people will try to stay safe. So I hope that people will be strategic, be patient, whether you're working for Hong Kong from outside or from inside. We should be thoughtful and patient and wait for the right opportunities to strike. But those opportunities have come and they'll continue to come as we try to weaken this regime and find ways to eventually make our way back into Hong Kong, into a Hong Kong that's ruled by Hong Kongers.
3、2、1追新聞。